The youngster and his wolf pup were fast friends, but then they were separated. They saw one another again in the woods after a long separation. The hunter stumbled upon a wolf pup first thing in the morning. The guy was lost and alone in the forest, and he hadn't been there long. But he heard the screams of a little animal, and he laid down his pistol and helped. He discovered the pup hiding beneath a giant tree, huddled and alone. Its mother really should have deserted it, the man thought, and he took pity on the wretched thing and brought it back to the place he loved. After the guy had returned to his house, like always, his wife and kid rushed to greet him on his return. When they saw the guy, they broke from their usual routine and stood still long enough to embrace him. Upon seeing what he had brought, the man's son and his wife expressed their appreciation. Even when he described what had transpired, his spouse was still upset. The wolf, in her eyes, was a wild creature that had no business being within their house. The small child, on the other hand, had an entirely different response than his mother. The ecstatic youngster bent down and gave the dog a bear hug. Father found son's excitement over seeing the wolf cute and gave him the right to eat the creature. That was the first day the wolf pup was really one of the pack. In spite of the advice of their friends and neighbors, the family continued to treat the wolf puppy like a dog. They planned to lock him up in the yard so that nobody else would be in danger. The family trusted the dog enough to let him run free inside the house. While the mother wolf was first hesitant about her new youngster, she gradually came around. This is because she saw the animal's beneficial effects on his kid. Her son, from the time he was a baby, had been reserved and reticent. This left him with little time for class participation and few social interaction. After the family brought in the wolf, things began to alter. The boys in the wolf pack became close after several months of playing together. The little boy's parents remarked on how much more engaged their kid was at both school and home after he made this new buddy. His professors were ecstatic to talk about how well he was doing in class. The young man's efforts in school had paid off, and his performance had improved to a new level. The young man would rise early on the morning of the first day of school. He did this to be closer to Onion Wolf. Since they had originally brought him in, the puppy had grown quite a bit. The wolf pup's family already knew what a sweetheart he was. They were certain that the puppy would never betray them or do them any damage. When the wolf disappeared, though, things quickly went from bad to worse. The wolf was usually confined outside the home, tethered to a fence. The chain had snapped, and the animal had vanished, they discovered one day. The family didn't know why the wolf would just up and go, and no one else had heard anything strange throughout the night. The loss hurt the youngster much. The kid had missed that wolves were wild and dangerous animals after all the times they had spent together. His folks said they'd purchase him a puppy as a substitute. Following the wolf's escape, they got a tiny husky. No amount of puppy love could ever heal the boy's broken heart. The child seemed to be losing control of his life. The weeks after the wolf left, the kid had trouble keeping food down and spent his leisure time watching. His instructors saw an abrupt shift in his demeanor when he returned to school. His family just told his instructors they had misplaced a pet when questioned. Nobody at school was aware of how much the youngster cared about his wolf. Slowly but surely, the child learned to let go of his wolf pup over the course of many years. He still sometimes reflected about his former pet, but eventually realized that he needed to carry on with his. The pain of losing his close buddy eventually subsided with time. The youngster matured into a well-rounded young man with a strong academic record and a full social calendar. He did his best for the husky, and the two of them became quite close. Sadly, the wolf pack that had provided so much happiness to the family is now only a fond memory. The young man arranged a meeting with his pals for that night in the mountains were blanketed in a heavy blanket of snow. Since sledding was the young man's preferred way to spend a winter day, that's what he planned to do with his pals. When he left, he informed his parents he would have been back in a few hours. The young man was unaware of what was ahead. The child thought of his wolf pup as he dragged his sled through to the snow. His father told him that when he was a kid, he discovered a dog curled down in the snow. The last time the young guy had a pap was a long time ago, and he seldom reflected on the event. The memory of their initial day together brought up a flood of melancholy. The young man shook off his musings and kept walking till he caught up with his pals. They tumbled down the icy slope for the sound of their merriment reverberated through the lowering clouds. They needed to go at some point. The youngster hoped his parents wouldn't object if he went sledding a few more times. Thereupon he bade his companions farewell by waving. Most of the party went home, leaving the boy behind, and the rest of the group to continue their journey. Several more times he went up the hill, relishing the sensation of the breeze. Still, the darkness quickly descended. The youngster forgot his watch at home, but knew it was already late. After taking one further slide, he decided he had had enough and was going home. At the precise moment, he was about to begin his second run down the slope. Somewhere behind him, The wind rustled the branches of the trees, but the youngster couldn't comprehend what was hiding in the shadows of the rotting. For some reason, the youngster decided to take a few tentative steps into the forest. That involuntary shift in position was an error. They saw wild beasts emerge from. The child slowly gained sight of each individual member of the wolf pack. There he was, confronted by full-grown wolves. The tiny youngster would be no match for their massive frames. When confronted by them, he realized he was completely outclassed. To get to the sled in time, he had to run. If he did manage to escape, he knew the monsters would outrun him regardless of the direction. The thought of dying filled him with dread. It was obvious that the youngster needed to weep. At the precise moment, his heart began to pound, and his chest began to ache with worry. A grey wolf came up to him. The child could see even in the shadows that this one was the biggest of the bunch. He unquestionably ruled as the pack's top dog. The youngster could reach it with one arm. Suddenly, the young man recognized the person before him. He had his wolf cub, and the formerly hyper-tiny creature had matured into a strong leader. There was no mistaking that the animal's eyes were the same, even if his physical appearance had evolved greatly. That's how the young man knew his wolf was different from the rest. It may have been a long time, however, the wolf still recognized the youngster. The wolf let out a startling howl as it remembered the scent of the youngster. The wolf then turned to the rest of the pack and growled at them. Clearly taken aback, the young man's jaw fell. He was safe from harm because there was a noticeable withdrawal of the smaller wolves, with some even lowering their heads. The two were longtime friends, and the youngster briefly laid a hand on his shoulder just before he ran into the. When he was being attacked by a bunch of wolves, the lone wolf came to his rescue. The child was overjoyed to report the wolf's survival to his parents and couldn't wait to go home to inform them. After he got back to his house, almost midnight had struck. His anxious parents. His mom hugged him and started crying right away. The whole family had trouble sleeping that night. In the middle of their living room's floor, the family sat attentively as their kid recounted his experience reuniting with the family's lone wolf. In what way did you perceive the story ended? Comment below and tell me what you think of the article. Submit a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. When we meet again, it won't be long.